Hello everyone and welcome to Sunburned Albino's Marble Snap Pool 1 tier list. This is going to be one of a few different videos. We're going to start with the first pool, and the way I'm going to do it is consider this like a tier list for people who are in Pool 1 right now. I'm going to rank these cards against other Pool 1 cards. So like we're going to pretend that Pool 2 and 3 don't exist, and we'll be judging the Pool 1 cards just as Pool 1 cards against each other. We've got S, A, B, C, D, F, and then current card, so you can see what I'm talking about, although you can also see what I'm talking about if I just click on that. Okay, first one is Angel. Angel. When one of your cards is destroyed, this flies out of your deck to replace it. This is a 1-2. This tier list, I think, was done in beta, because some of these power and energy rankings are like not currently accurate, like they've been changed since then. So I'll just go ahead and point that out when that happens. This card is definitely meant to be used in a destroy deck. When one of your cards is destroyed, it flies out of your deck to replace it. The problem with Angel is that this doesn't work if Angel is in your hand. I wouldn't call it an oversight, but I feel like you should change it so that it also works when it's in it. Because this card, if you draw Angel on the first round, like, just throw it away. It's not even really that necessary of an addition to a Carnage deck. So I'm going to put Angel in, I'm going to say, like, It's not horrible, because you can still use it as intended, and it's okay, but that drawback definitely gives it a C tier designation, in my estimation. Next up, we have Ant-Man. Ant-Man out here, ongoing card. If you have 3 other cards here, plus 3 power. Ant-Man is a pretty, like, staple 1 energy card. If you can get 4 cards in one thing, and Ant-Man's one of them, plus 3 power, turn it into a 4-banger. Pretty solid, pretty decent. Ant-Man and Hawkeye are okay, like, synergy going on, because they're just filling each other up and making each other better. If you wanted to put Captain America up in there, so other cards have plus 1 power. So just like, if you combine Ant-Man with other cards that are easy to place and that give bonuses for being placed there, and give, like, support to other cards, you can make Ant-Man, like, a decent 4th card in any lane. But he doesn't, like, blow the doors off. What Ant-Man is a prime target for getting sniped by Elektra. Ant-Man, I'm gonna give, like, as far as 1-cost cards go, like, he's not... There are worse ones for sure. For a 1-cost card, like, if we group every energy cost into its own category, and we're talking about, like, oh, let's rank Ant-Man against the other 1-cost cards, then in that case, Ant-Man is probably, I'm gonna say, either B or A. Next up, we have Blade, who is out here in the... There he is. On reveal, discard a card from your hand. Blade looks super cool. I'm definitely going to give him that one. Blade is a gamble. The discard deck, previously I thought it wasn't that good. Then earlier today, I went on and did like 10 duels with it. And I was actually getting some work done even in the Pool 2, like, atmosphere. I definitely think the discard deck has really good potential and can be great. Blade is not really the most integral part of that setup, just because here's how the discard card works. You want to get up in here with Apocalypse, who when you discard this from your hand, put it back with plus 4 power. So you just want all the discard effects to target this card so that he can keep gaining 4 power. But you can also discard other cards like Wolverine, who when it's discarded or destroyed, play it at a random location. So like this can be good bait. Since you can't pick which card, like you can fill your deck with other cards that would be okay if you discarded it. What else happens is that you get these cards that discard other cards, but then they end up discarding each other. So like Lady Sif discards the highest cost card from your hand. That's much better than Blade in my estimation, because you want to discard Annihilation. But then if you have, say, Blade and Lady Sif in your first draw and you play Blade, Blade might just discard Lady Sif and then you're just out in the lurch. But I do applaud consistency in a card game, and I think Blade is not very consistent. I'm going to give him C tier. Next up, we have Elektra. I am a big fan of Elektra. Elektra might be my favorite 1-cost card. On reveal, destroy a random enemy 1-cost card at this location. She is a great Ant-Man sniper. She destroys Hawkeye. I mean, she just, by definition, destroys every 1-cost card in here. The only thing you don't want her to destroy is Nova, so he doesn't, like, buff the rest of his cards. I think turn 1 is the most throwawayable turn. Like, it's okay if you don't play any cards on turn 1. If you draw Elektra and she's your only playable character card on turn 1, I pass my turn, and I wait to see what they throw down. If they throw down a Quicksilver somewhere, if they're just putting down like a Squirrel Girl or whatever. Then on turn 2, maybe I'll play Electra if the 1-cost card is threatening enough, and we'll get the guaranteed destruction on there. Electra is also a card that it matters what your, let's say initiative, just to get super nerdy. When you are playing your duel, and you see your names in the top left and the top right, one of your names is going to be glowing. That's the person whose cards are going to flip over first. So the person who has initiative, whose cards will flip over first, does not want to play Electra on the first turn, even if they guess correctly that their opponent's going to play a 1-cost card in the same spot, because Electra will flip over first, and then there will be no target for her to kill. Like, the effect will activate and nothing will happen. If I had to pick one best one, we may go through here at the end and, like, crown a champion of each energy cost, but for now, I'm putting Electra in A tier. So next up is Hawkeye. Now, Hawkeye out here on reveal, if you play a card here next turn, +2 power, this is a good way to make Hawkeye a 1/3 if you're going to play a card in the same lane on the next turn. It's a little restrictive because you have to play a card in the same lane on the next turn, and your opponent knows that, so they can plan accordingly. Hawkeye is very bad against the Guardians of the Galaxy cards. If you play Hawkeye, and you've got that on-reveal thing going for the next turn, your opponent knows you're trying to place a card in that lane. They know exactly what lane you're doing, so they're going to throw out their Star-Lord and their Rocket Raccoon, and they're going to get you. If your opponent play a card here this turn. Like, all these Guardians of the Galaxy cards are all about staying in the same lane as their opponents on the same turn, and Hawkeye pretty much just sets a big neon sign over his head saying, hey, play in this lane. You know, he definitely has counterplay, and I don't usually see Hawkeye getting a whole lot of stuff done. Like, just being a 1/3 is not good enough to help really win any kind of lane. I would probably also give him C tier. He's not D, but like, he's not like doing a whole lot out here. Next up we have Iron Fist. Iron Fist needs to be played, well, he doesn't need to be played in a move deck, but he is definitely most utilized in a deck where a lot of cards get benefits from either being moved or moving other cards. So Iron Fist on reveal, move the next card you play one location to the left after it reveals. You can also use this to circumvent some bad location effects. If there's an effect that, say, a card can't be played at this location, you put Iron Fist down, your next card, put it to the right of that location, and then that card gets moved towards that location. Can be a good way to lock that down when nobody else can play anything there. Iron Fist is an enabler. It's not like a great one, but it does what it says on the tin. It gets the job done. If you're playing 2 cards at the same time, you can play Iron Fist and then another card on the same turn, and Iron Fist will activate the other card to move to the left, so you can do some tricky situations there. Probably B tier, just because he doesn't, I don't know if he has any drawbacks other than if you have to play him and you don't want your next card to move. But I don't see a ton of situations where that's the case. Okay, and next up we got Korg. Everybody's lovable Australian/New Zealand Korg in all the Thor movies. Let's see, yeah, all the energy costs and power have been right so far. Korg is a 1/2, on reveal, shuffles a rock into your opponent's deck. If you want to do the math on that, let's say your opponent draws, what, 3 cards and then a 4th? So then a third of their deck has already been drawn through. Turn 1, you play Korg, shuffle a rock into your opponent's deck. They now have like an 17 or 18% chance to draw a rock on any given turn. Something like that. It's a little less than 20. So it can definitely be like an issue for sure. Like, because the decks are only 12 cards, don't underestimate how much damage a single rock can do, just like gumming up what your opponent's trying to do with draw and stuff. So I do think Korg is probably an above average 1-cost card. And I would say that he belongs, I'm going to put him in B tier as well. He does not, I can't think of a drawback that he would have. Let's see, next up is Mantis. Mantis out here with a 1/2 power and an energy cost. On reveal, if your opponent played a card here this turn, draw a card from their deck. I love card effects that let me draw from my opponent's deck, or just like destroy cards in my opponent's deck. And in general, you should love card effects that just put cards into your hand, unless you're doing like a discard build. I personally, I think variety is the spice of life. I like having options, even if you can't use all of them. At least you get to pick. You do have to guess, because she's a Guardian of the Galaxy card. They all have to guess like which lane your opponent's going to be in. Like, it's just nice to have other people's cards, or just random cards. Anything that puts cards into your hand is good. I think Mantis is probably, I'm just gonna put Mantis in B tier. I think Mantis is pretty decent. Misty Knight, is the next card. That's gonna go straight into F tier. Misty Knight is the worst card in Pool 1. She is a 1/2, she does not have an effect. Enough said. You know what I'm, like, there's, okay. Next up, Nightcrawler is up here in the current card. Nightcrawler is a decent 1-cost card. Definitely for a move deck, you can move Nightcrawler once anywhere you like. It's very good for circumventing locations that either destroy the card if you play it there, or just say cards can't be played there. There are also locations where if you move the card there, it gets a bonus. So Nightcrawler is also very tricky because on turn 6 you can move Nightcrawler somewhere else and really just like confound your opponent and subvert their expectations by putting something much stronger in its place. Like if they thought that they won that location already, but then you move Nightcrawler and replace it with like a big heavy shot card. I think Nightcrawler is probably A tier. So it's in contention for best 1-cost card in Pool 1, I would say. Next up, we've got Nova. Nova is out here only being useful with decks that revolve around destroying cards. When it's destroyed, give your cards +1 power. Because it's a 1-cost card, like, you get it out there and then it's really tempting to just blow it up on the next turn, but you'll get like almost nothing out of it. So it's good to combine Nova with like cards like Squirrel Girl that can like fill your field with buffable cards. Nova is definitely good when it can buff the most amount of cards possible. I do think Nova is kind of essential to a Carnage deck, or any destruction deck of any kind. You definitely want Nova in there. It's because it's so good in its niche, I will put it in A. I think an S tier card should be something that's good in any situation. And then A tiers can like be confined to their niche, but as long as they're doing a good job, that's probably good enough. Next up, we have Quicksilver. Quicksilver starts in your opening hand. It's just a guaranteed draw on turn 1. And I personally don't think that's as useful as I used to think that it was. I think, because I think turn 1 is now a skippable turn, if need be, Quicksilver doesn't have a ton of value to me, especially when there's a lot of other 1-cost cards you could put in your deck and have a chance to draw. So I'm putting Quicksilver in D tier. Alright, next up we got Rocket Raccoon, who is just a 1-cost Star-Lord. On reveal, if your opponent played a card here this turn, +2 power. So if you guess right, you can make this a 1/4, and that's pretty good. But I do think the Guardians of the Galaxy cards in general are pretty good. Some of them are better than others. Rocket Raccoon is pretty non-committal because of his low cost, and the +2 power is just good if you get it, and if you don't get it, he's just a 1/2. It's probably on the same level as Mantis. Like, if you hit that effect, pretty good, man. Good job getting the effect. I'll give it a B tier. Next up, we have Squirrel Girl. Squirrel Girl is gross, for one, but in addition to that, Squirrel Girl is like a pretty useful card in some instances. She is good because on reveal adds a 1-power squirrel to each other location, so when you play Squirrel Girl, you're basically playing 3 Squirrel Girls, 1 in each lane. And because of that, you now have 3 buff targets, so you can combine that with cards like Blue Marvel or Ironheart, or, where's he at? Khazar, whose 1-cost cards have +1 power. So that's just like a free 3-power buff. Squirrel Girl can also be good for providing cards for Carnage to destroy, and also for putting squirrels in places where cards can't normally be played. So Squirrel Girl has a variety of uses. I'm going to put Squirrel Girl in... I'm going to say B tier. Alright, next up we got Uatu. The card that cheats. This is the card that sees through walls. This is the card that uses wall hacks. Uatu the Watcher, once this is in your hand, you can see the unrevealed locations. Obviously, this is really only good if you get him turn 1, maybe turn 2, for at least getting the rightmost locations effect. I probably don't need to tell you how much of a game changer that can be. You can just plan your strategy earlier. That's what Uatu is good for. He's just a cheat code for like a bit more foresight. So this dude comes out here and he is probably A tier. Yondu. Yondu, another Guardians of the Galaxy card, but does not need to be in the same lane as anybody. On reveal, Yondu will come out here and remove the top card of your opponent's deck, just like that. And remove does not mean destroy, and it does not mean discard. This will not trigger any effects of like if a card got discarded or if a card got destroyed. Yondu just whistles and then snaps that card out of existence. It can be pretty devastating when you play Yondu turn 1 and then you just immediately get rid of your opponent's anchor card to like their whole deck. When I play Yondu on turn 1 and the card he destroys is Carnage, I'm just like, LOL. Like, oh, I'm so sorry, your entire strategy just got demolished. If he destroys your opponent's 6-cost card, then that sucks for them, is basically how that goes. So I'm gonna, you know what, yeah, because of that I will say Yondu is A tier. Angela, we are done with the 1-cost cards. Oh, because we are done with the 1-cost cards, let's go through, we have to pick a winner. I hate to say it because he's so ugly, it's probably Owatu. Being able to see those locations is a game changer. You know, sometimes you lose a duel because you didn't know what a location was and you just misplayed it so hard and you had no way to know. Unless you had Owatu in your deck, then you would have known. When you play a card here, +2 power. So Angela is a good, like, first card to play in a lane, and then just, like, stack a bunch of low-cost cards in there that can make... You play Angela in a lane, then you put Nightcrawler in that lane, which buffs Angela, then you can move Nightcrawler to somewhere else. Maybe you can also play Angela with something like... Where is it at? Hulkbuster. Merge this card with a random friendly card at this location, so that you're filling that lane, but not with trash, and you're leaving space open. So you can just make Angela like a beast without hard committing to just playing a bunch of low power cards here so that she's not the only good thing in the lane. You know, a 2-5 or a 2-7, like, that's just good. That's just really good. You gotta do some work to make it happen, but she's not, like, amazing, but she can do something. I'll probably give her B tier. Next up, we have Armor. This was one of the last Pool 1 cards I unlocked. I have not done very much testing on Armor, but theorycraft-wise, I can tell you that this is just the anti-Carnage card. Ongoing, cards at this location can't be destroyed. Basically what you do is your opponent plays Nova, and then your next turn you put Armor where Nova is. That's what you do. You hard counter the Carnage build. Personally, I think Armor is probably just like a C tier card. Next up, we have Cable. Dude, there's like 72 cards in this tier list. My mouth is screaming. Cable! On reveal, put the bottom card of your opponent's deck into your hand. Snatch a card from your opponent, put it in your hand. I love this card. It's card draw, free card draw, and it's card removal for your opponent. You might just snatch their anchor, same way as Yondu with destroying it. I think Cable is a very useful, good card. I mean, that's about the size of it. I would honestly give Cable like A tier. Next, we have Carnage. There he is, the man himself. Carnage is a meta-defining card, 100%. Lots of Pool 1 meta revolves around Carnage, and even more so in Pool 2 because there are more cards that can be destroyed and that have effects when they get destroyed. But in exclusively Pool 1 terms, Carnage is still very good. The only trap you don't want to fall into with Carnage is because it's a 2-cost card, don't play this on turn 2. Don't do that. You want to fill up a lane and then play Carnage on like turn 4 or 5. Treat it like it's a 5-cost card, honestly, you'll be better off. But yeah, on reveal, destroys your other cards here, +2 power for each destroyed. So you combine this with tons of synergies of cards that love to get destroyed. You combine that with Squirrel Girl, who provides you with destroyable cards. You combine that with Nova, who buffs your stuff when he gets destroyed. You combine it with Wolverine, who when he's destroyed, he just gets played somewhere else. And you just have yourself a grand old time because Carnage is not only a cool card, it's a cool meta. It's pretty much just like the quintessential Marvel Snap card. And because of that, I am going to put Carnage in S tier. Alright, next up is Kraven. When a card moves here... Wait, is... Nope, I did that from the wrong area. The tier list says the next card is Colossus. So Colossus is out here. I got the, like, retro variant of him. I don't like that, but... Colossus is out here with an ongoing ability. It can't be destroyed, moved, or have its power reduced. But, like, this is 3 different effects in one card, and all of them can be useful. So not being able to be destroyed can be useful. Not being able to be moved can be useful if you've got a location that's like, on turn 5, move all cards in this location to random other locations. Like, those kind of locations are really annoying. So if you got Colossus up in there, you can just be assured that he ain't going anywhere. And then he can help you be like a 3 energy buffer against your opponent on turn 6 when they're trying to play like their last card on that location that forced all the other cards to move. I would give him a B tier, probably. He's not C. He's a little better than C, so that's fine. Next up, we got Domino. Domino, I do really like Domino. I don't find myself using her that often. She's basically just Quicksilver, but a 2-cost, in that she always comes into your hand on turn 2 and not before. But the not before is actually a little more of a decent effect than you would think, because it means you can't draw her preemptively to when you want to draw her, which would be on turn 2. Which gives your other cards like an extra slot to make sure that good cards you want on your first hand get up in there. So Domino is good in that regard. I would give her probably C tier though. Okay, next up we have Forge. Forge coming up out here with his... where is he at? Forge with his where did he go? Where is Forge? I know I have him, there he is. Forge is a 2/1. On reveal, give the next card you play +2 power. Forge, I've come around to Forge being a great enabler for cards that clone themselves. So you play Forge, and then you either play Mr. Sinister, so that Mr. Sinister has 4 power and his resulting clone has 4 power, or you play Forge, and then you play Multiple Man, so that Multiple Man is now a 5 power card, and then every time he moves, he creates a 5 power clone, which is just like multiplying his efficacy. So Forge is a really, really strong enabler of very, very specific cards. I'm probably also going to give him B tier. Next up, there's Craven. Now we're doing Craven out here. Craven, 2 power, 2 cost. When a card moves here, this gets +2 power. Obviously pretty good in a move deck. It's in Pool 1, this doesn't really work too well. When you get up into Pool 2, you start getting some other cards that are really going to make this dude go off, that I've played against but not been able to attain myself. But, you know, for now in Pool 1, like, you've got Nightcrawler. You can play Craven and then play Nightcrawler and then move Nightcrawler over to Craven. Craven becomes a 2/4. You can play Craven and have Multiple Man out there, moving around based on like locations. You can have Iron Fist moving cards to Craven's location, but then you have to play Craven before you play Iron Fist, which is kind of like backwards. Like, definitely it is possible for Craven to get some stuff done. It's not really feasible in Pool 1 though. Craven is probably D tier. I think his potential can be unlocked later, but since we're only ranking cards against each other in Pool 1, he has not been able to shine just yet. Next up we have Lizard. Lizard, if you look at the tier list, is actually incorrect. Now, currently he got buffed, he is now a 2/5. His ongoing ability is -3 power if your opponent has 4 cards here. I don't find Lizard to be that great anyway, like even after the buff, so when he was a 2/4, he must have just been ass. The benefit is what Lizard forces your opponent to do. Lizard, you put Lizard on a lane, all of a sudden your opponent got to scramble to get 4 cards on the same lane, so Lizard isn't getting so buffed, so that he gets nerfed, and that's really something that like plays in people's minds. Is like, oh, there's a Lizard on that lane, I gotta scramble and put a bunch of cards up in there. So that can ruin their general like initial strategy that they were trying to do. It can just sort of throw their brain chemistry out of whack for a little bit there. And then so what a good thing to do that I like to do sometimes if I'm playing Lizard is I will throw Lizard onto a lane that I've already forfeited in my head. That I'm like, I don't really care if I win this lane, I'm just gonna make them waste cards trying to like equal my power or surpass it. Just because like people want to see Lizard get the debuff, like it just makes them feel good. Dude, I hate his animation. Why is his tail moving like that? It's so gross. I want to say C or B. Like, he's really not great just on his face, but he can be good if your opponent is very suggestible. Next up, we got Medusa out here as a 2/2. Medusa, if played in the middle on reveal, will just get +2 power outright, will just become a 2/4. That's decent. There's really not much more to say about that. But, like, I have noticed that people kind of stop running Medusa after they get, like, halfway through Pool 1. Like, she's really good in the beginning just because she's, like, the best you can do for a 2-cost card for a while. But I think she falls off, even towards the latter end of Pool 1. So comparing her against Pool 1, I'm going to put Medusa in, like, probably C tier. Next up, we got Mr. Sinister. Mr. Sinister out here. On reveal, add a Sinister clone to this location with the same power. That's important. If you get out here with Mr. Sinister and he's, like, pre-buffed by Forge, like we mentioned, or some other kind of, maybe a location effect that just gives +1 power to cards, then Mr. Sinister gonna come out here with a buffed power, and then his clone will share that buffed power. Damn, his clone looks, like, better than he does. I don't know if he should like that. Like, just that hair, it's just nicer. I don't know. If I had a clone and that clone was like a little more attractive than me, I think I would kill it. Is also very good at just like filling up a lane pretty quick. So if you want to use him with Ant-Man, Mr. Sinister, especially if he got buffed by Forge, is like a good Ant-Man synergy. Pretty alright. I'm gonna give him B tier. Next up, we got Multiple Man. I didn't realize Multiple Man, because by his effect, you're like, when this moves, add a copy to the old location, and you're like, oh, that's a nice supplemental sort of background effect to like a movement-oriented deck. No, Multiple Man is the star of the movement deck. If you buff him, you need to buff him, and then all of his clones will share the buff, and then all of a sudden you got a whole bunch of guys with like 7 power just populating every part of every lane. Plus, well, you can't really do Iron Fist and Forge, you gotta pick one or the other, because they both need to be played directly before Multiple Man. I think it doesn't get fully realized until Pool 2. At least. I think there are cards in Pool 2 that are very necessary for him to super pop off. Like, even as is, Forge plus Multiple Man plus, like, a location that moves him, plus, you know, maybe a Heimdall at the last second that moves your other cards. I think you can definitely... Oh, plus... the other card that he's really good with is, where's it at? Doctor Strange. Move your highest power cards to this location. Generally, if you're doing it right, Multiple Man will be your highest cost card, and you'll just create a free clone with Doctor Strange. And it's just, this is a great little synergy of like Forge, Multiple Man, Doctor Strange, and Heimdall in Pool 1 specifically. And then there are other cards in Pool 2 that really make that go off the rails. You can also Hulkbuster him. Hulkbuster is a great, like, Multiple Man enabler. So you can definitely do some action out there and make a deck that would just make your opponents very upset. You're like, what? This is so good! And then they get to Pool 2 and they're like, oh, that was just alright. But still, for Pool 1, Multiple Man, like, this might be the strongest synergy in the game if it really comes together. Probably at least A tier, we may think about S tier. Next up, we have Scarlet Witch. I am a Scarlet Witch supporter. On reveal, replace this location with a random new one. It's great for getting rid of effects that are either not helpful to you or are too helpful to your opponent at the given time. And what's cool is that she doesn't trigger the effect if you change the effect. So, like, if you play her on top of, like, cards that are played here get destroyed, she will change the effect before the effect activates, so she won't get destroyed. So she's, like, average stats, and she gives you a little RNG effect bonus, which puts her probably in B tier mathematically. Next up, we have Sentinel. Sentinel, I got a Sentinel variant. I'm a huge fan of this Sentinel variant. That is so much cooler than this stupid Sentinel variant. Ew, look at that gross colors. I don't like that at all. On reveal, add another Sentinel to your hand. This is particularly good with, like, the Moon Girl, Devil Dinosaur kind of deck, where you're trying to have as many cards in your hand as possible. So Sentinel, you can play Sentinel, you can get some 3 power cards out there while keeping your hand full, so that Devil Dinosaur can get more power for having more cards in your hand, and so that Moon Girl can duplicate the hand better and have more cards to duplicate, which will in turn make Devil Dinosaur so much better. So I do think that Sentinel has utility in that way, and it also just ensures that you have cards to play, cards to fill slots with. C tier. Okay, next up we have Shocker, who is the Misty Knight of 2-cost cards. All he does is he's like, I'm gonna blast you. But what actually happens is that he gets blasted directly to F tier. Right next to Misty Knight. Cards that don't have any effects, and they just have, like, the basic amount of power, it's like, why would you have that when you could have a 2/3 card that does something? Occasionally, you'll get a location that's like, if your card doesn't have an effect, give it whatever, like, give it some kind of buff. I never see that. I think I've seen that, like, twice in my entire career. Next up, we have Star-Lord. Star-Lord out here, just a stronger version of Rocket Raccoon. You guess the lane that your opponent's gonna play a card in, you get +3 power. They're not, like, super blowing the doors off, but you've got an advantage over your opponent who isn't doing, like, other, like, major things going on in that lane. So I would give Star-Lord probably a B. Next up, we got Wolverine out here. Wolverine is probably, like, the hypest card in Pool 1, just in terms of, like, who he is. I think when people draw Wolverine, you're like, oh, that's hype. Like, yes, I finally got Wolverine. Before you look at, like, what he actually does, you're just like, dude, get Wolverine, though. Like, come on, you know? When this card is discarded or destroyed, play it at a random location. That's good. That means he can be used in a destruction deck or a discard deck. And if he gets destroyed or discarded, boom, you got a second Wolverine out here. A B tier card. Not A, but B. Moving on to the 3-cost cards, we have Bishop. Bishop is not a 3-2, like it says there. Bishop got nerfed. He is now a 3-1. When you play a card, this gains +1 power. So I guess that 1 power was really making a huge difference out here with people playing hella cards. This would be really good if it wasn't just playing a card, but like having a card be on the field, but that's not the case. Like if you play Bishop and then you play Squirrel Girl, he's not getting +3 power, he's just getting 1. Which is a missed opportunity if you ask me. He could have been broken, but they said no thank you. So to me, Bishop is like not actually that good. I think Bishop is a D tier card. Okay, next up we got Captain America. Captain America, pretty basic card. Ongoing, your other cards at this location have +1 power. Very good to use with Ant-Man. Captain America also pairs pretty well with Iron Man. Just anybody who like is intent on increasing the power of the card at that place, Captain America really helps them out. And, you know, best case scenario, he's out there adding 4 power to your squad, so he's effectively a 3-7. You know, it's just, it's not like super bombastic, like he's a B tier. Next up is Cosmo. Cosmo is the card I unlocked last in Pool 1. He was my last card. I've used him a few times, and I've had him used against me. I think I'm not great at him, because when he's used against me, it ruins my whole day, and then when I try and do it against people, they're just like not running reveal cards. But Cosmo ongoing on-reveal abilities won't happen at this location. This also applies to you, so if you're running Cosmo, you gotta make sure that you're not nerfing yourself into the ground. But Cosmo is really good at like stopping Odin. The 3 is not great power-wise, but it's not that bad considering what his like ability is. Like, you know, Cyclops is a 3-4 and he don't do nothing. So I'll take the -1 power for that occasionally broken ability. I would say that Cosmo is probably A tier. Next up we got Cyclops. We just showed that man. This dude says, let's move X-Men, and then calls it a day. He's like, that's all I need to do. So he just, you know, goes straight into F tier. I don't know if you saw that one coming, but there's a bit of a theme here. This dude don't do nothing. There are cards that are 3-4s that do something. Enough said. Next up we have Deathlock. On reveal, destroy your other cards at this location. This is another card to put in the Carnage deck. When Carnage has destroyed his cards, you get Deathlock out there, also being able to destroy cards if necessary, like maybe if you don't have Carnage yet. That's very good. It's also good in locations where like they put the Cyber Ninja thing where each side either gets 2 Raptors that don't do anything or Cyber Ninjas that are actively taking away power from you. You put Deathlock in that location and clear the field, it's great. So I would say that Deathlock, you know, does what he's supposed to, and he's a 5 power, which is pretty decent. Possibly A tier. Next up we got Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange makes multiple man amazing. Doctor Strange is also fantastic at stealing lanes from people. Like, just absolutely coming out of straight nowhere and just changing the entire landscape of the situation. On reveal, he moves your highest power cards to this location. That means card. The verbiage is weird. In practice, whatever your highest power card is, Doctor Strange will move it. If there's more than one that has the same highest power, he will move all of them. You know, it's not like if you've got like a 7 power and a 6 power, he's going to move both the 7 and the 6. He's just going to move the 7. But Doctor Strange is just a sneaky little shifty character. Like, he will stealthily win you duels, just sweep them completely off your opponent's feet. And because of that, I do think he's definitely A. Groot, he's a Guardian of the Galaxy. You already know what he does. He just gets +3 when you play the card the same place your opponent played the card in the same turn. Turns him into a 3-6. Decent. So just put like literally all of them there. The only difference we'll get there is that Gamora is better. Next up, we got Hulkbuster. Hulkbuster is an enabler to the max. I didn't realize how good this dude could be and how well he could be used. Hulkbuster, on reveal, merges himself with a random friendly card at this location. Now, the fact that it's a random friendly card can be unfortunate, but you know, if you have one card there and you're guaranteed you want him to be merged, that's pretty good. The Hulkbuster is great because it enables locations where they get a power boost if there's only one card there, because you can have one card there, then merge Hulkbuster with that card to make it even stronger and still get the 1 power bonus. And then again, with multiple man Hulkbuster, anything that creates clones that hasn't created them yet, you merge them with Hulkbuster, then have him create the clones, bam. Like, useful to a degree where I would probably put him in A tier. Next up, we've got Ironheart. This is, I'm not gonna lie to you, Ironheart is my favorite card in the game. And the reason for that is, look at her. But also, well, actually, that's just about it. It's like, I just really like how this card looks. I just like the card. You know, the effect, I like the effect. I don't think the effect is incredible, but it does functionally. She can pretend that she's a 3 with 6 power. If she gives 3 other friendly cards plus 2 power, like she just adds 6 power to the team in random locations, which is pretty good. Ironheart is good. Getting double tapped by Odin, who activates the abilities again of on-reveal cards. She's a great target for that. Ironheart can really come in here and like stealth win you a lane that was previously a close contest that you were gonna lose. Is very good with like Squirrel Girl, very good with, you gotta make sure that you have a lot of cards on the field for her to buff. At least 3, really. What you should at least probably do is like, you know, you play your whatever card at first, and then maybe you play like Mr. Sinister second turn so that you have 3 total cards that you can play Ironheart and buff them all. Because if Ironheart's coming out there and only buffing 2 cards, like it's really just not that great. But I really do still like her. Sometimes I find myself in a position where other cards are better to play. So I'm gonna put Ironheart in B, even though it's my favorite card. Alright, next up we got Lady Sif. On reveal, discard the highest cost card from your hand. The only thing to do with this is come down here, have Apocalypse in your hand. When you discard this from your hand, put it back with +4 power. That's what you do out here. You Lady Sif, Apocalypse, and then it's pretty cool if you have a location where, like, if you play her in that location, you get a copy of her added to your hand. If you get lucky enough to have that happen, you can get Apocalypse super buff. If you're running a discard deck, which I've been doing for like 15 or 16 duels, the strongest I've ever gotten Apocalypse in pool 1 was like 16 power, which is pretty good. But like, that's only if like some luck has transpired. I think Lady Sif is good at her job, so I will probably put her in A tier because she's like the card that you need. All right, next up we have Mr. Fantastic. This man is a staple in pool 1. This dude goes in the middle, and what he does is that adjacent locations have +2 power. So he's a 3/2, he's not very powerful himself, but those stretchy arms, man, going to the left and the right, everybody puts him in the middle to get 2 extra power to both those locations. What are you holding? Is that like a broken sword? What is that? Looks like somebody broke off a piece of Keyblade. He's decent. He doesn't really blow the doors off, but he can just if you're against the Mr. Fantastic, he can just force you to play like an extra card in a lane that you didn't want to play. I would give Mr. Fantastic like, I mean, he's a B. You know, it's decent. Next up we have Morph. Morph. Dude, I got this Morph variant. This thing is gross. This is an ugly Morph variant. Let me get the regular one. Morph on reveal becomes a copy of a random card in your opponent's hand. I like Morph just because it's kind of wacky. I feel like, you know, sometimes you'll get lucky, sometimes you won't. I feel like most of the time he's not going to become like a 1 or a 2 cost card because your opponent will have played those already. So generally he's probably going to turn into either a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6, which is just going to give him either equal or greater value. So he has a higher chance, I think, of being better than being bad. So I would put him in B tier as a result, just purely based on like the results of luck. Next up, we have the Punisher. I do find myself enjoying the Punisher a decent amount. He's an ongoing card, +1 power for each opposing card at this location. So if you know that, like, if you would put the Punisher opposite Ant-Man. But yeah, I think the Punisher's good. He's pretty much only good if your opponent has at least 3 cards in the lane. I think the Punisher is probably B tier. You're gonna see a lot of B tiers, it looks like. Next up we have Swordmaster, another key player in the discard deck. On reveal, discard a card from your hand. It's any card, it's not targeted like Lady Sif's, so you're not guaranteed to get Apocalypse out there, but if you've got other cards in your hand like Wolverine or anything else that becomes discardable. Although the problem with Pool 1 is that it's really just Wolverine and Apocalypse that want to get discarded. But even if you were not really trying to discard anything in particular, like Swordmaster is still a 3/6, like that's just good. Swordmaster by himself, even if he discards a card you didn't want him to discard, like he's still like gonna shore up a lane, like he got 6 power. I think Swordmaster is probably a B tier card. Next up we got Wolfsbane. Wolfsbane, a card I used to use a lot in the beginning. Where is that man / woman? I've seen a Wolfsbane variant that was a chick, so I don't know. Wolfsbane is a 3/1, but on reveal +2 power for each other card you have here. Wolfsbane absolutely kills the game with Ant-Man, or if you're running any kind of thing where you're gonna play Wolfsbane as the 4th card in a 4-card lane. Because then he's gonna come out here and get 7 power total. He'll be a 3/7, and that's big. That's a big gain for a specific situation, but not a difficult situation to pull off, so I'm gonna give him, you guessed it, B tier. Next up we have Enchantress. But Enchantress is out here as a 4/4. On reveal, remove the abilities from all ongoing cards at this location. This card can really mess up another person's deck. Especially if they're going full hog on ongoing cards, Enchantress can absolutely throw a wrench in the works and just completely counterplay it. Enchantress ruins Mr. Fantastic, ruins Iron Man, Enchantress destroys Captain America, Ant-Man. But yeah, throwing Enchantress up against Blue Marvel in particular too is really good. Or getting rid of Devil Dinosaur, like that can completely neuter him, can completely neuter Claw. Enchantress is really good at busting like a lot of some of the best cards in the game. So I definitely think she probably deserves to be A tier for that. Next up we got Jessica Jones. I really like Jessica Jones as a card. A 4/4. On reveal, if you don't play a card here next turn, +4 power. You can just make her a 4/8 for free just by throwing her somewhere and then going somewhere else the next turn. And that's so easy to do. It's so non-committal. Jessica Jones is just it's a 4/8 with almost no drawbacks, really. I think Jessica Jones is absolutely like an A tier. Alright, next up we have Khazar. Khazar actually has been nerfed. This is not a 4/5, it is a 4/4 now. Khazar, ongoing, your 1-cost cards have +1 power. Khazar runs with the likes of Squirrel Girl, gives squirrels +1 power. Any sort of like environmental cards like rocks or raptors or things of that nature will give them +1 power. So if you're just out here absolutely spamming the field with your 1s, Khazar can really just be like basically a Blue Marvel for your 1s, and then you combine that with Blue Marvel, playing him on the next turn, like you can get +2 on like every card on the field. It's gonna make a big difference. Definitely needs to be in a specialized deck. He does not really function unless you have a lot of 1-cost cards. So I am going to give him B tier. Next up is Moon Girl. Moon Girl out here. On reveal, duplicate your hand. This is absolutely central to the Devil Dinosaur play, where you get extra stuff for having a lot of cards in your hand. In Pool 1, that's pretty much all there is to it, is just Moon Girl plus Devil Dinosaur. You don't really get a whole lot of other effects that can help with that until Pool 2. The only exceptions are you'd want to throw Mantis up in there, you'd want to throw Cable up in there, excuse me. Just anything that like on reveal like puts a card in your hand from anywhere. That's when you also want to be running Sentinel. But as far as Pool 1 is concerned, there isn't a whole lot of potential in the big hand deck until you get into some of the later pools. So I'm gonna give Moon Girl a C. Alright, next up we have Namor. This dude, Aquaman out here. Ongoing, +5 powers. This is your only card here, so this is the card that you want to get the like 1 power or 1 card lane challenge complete with. So you put Namor there, you put Mr. Fantastic in the other lane, and you put Claw in the other lane, and then you just get like a lot of power and with a lot of free space. So Namor is great there. So I would give Namor probably a B tier. But it takes a lot of cards to beat him, and you can just like, you can make someone struggle for a lane with just putting that 1 card down, so. Alright, next up we have Strong Guy. Laziest name I've ever seen besides Angela. Where is Strong Guy? There you are. Ongoing, if your hand is empty, +6 power. I've tried a discard deck like 12 duels. I put this guy in there. This guy's effect never activated. My deck was never empty. So in terms of pool 1, I don't think this goes off at all. I think this card is dead in the water. So you're pretty much just going to have him as a 4/4 that does nothing. I think Strong Guy is a D tier card in pool 1. I think he can probably go off later if cards get introduced that can discard more than one card, or discard like your entire hand or something. But as it stands, I think pool 1 is not able to make good use of Strong Guy at all. Next up we have the Thing. I mean, he's a 4/6. Like, the Thing is actually kind of not as bad comparatively as like a 3/4 Cyclops or a 2/3 Shocker. Because if you look at F tier, it's like 1/2, 2/3, 3/4, but here it's 4/6, not 4/5. So the Thing is actually doing a little bit of extra work. Honestly, I'm of the opinion that the Thing probably has to be D tier because of that. Like, that +1 power actually earned you the way out from F. Good job. Next up we have White Queen. This is another good card, a good favorite of mine. On reveal, draw a copy of the highest cost card in your opponent's hand. I like cards, like I've mentioned multiple times, that just put cards in my hand, especially... Well, it draws a copy, it doesn't take it from your opponent. That would be absolutely ridiculous. I kind of wish she did that, just so everyone in the world would use her and then people would quit the game. White Queen can be really good if you have not drawn your own 6-cost card yet. If that's in like the back of your deck and it's just not going to come out, then you throw down White Queen, who is a 4/6, which is just good power straight up, with the addition of making so of salvaging your turn 6 potentially. So I think she is quite good, and I am going to give her A tier. All right, next up we have Abomination. We're out here in the 5-cost cards. I'll be 100% honest, I have not used this dude probably in a single duel, just because he has no effect, but I will give it to him that he's a 5/9. He's a 5/9. Like, that's not, as far as no effect cards go, like, they be jumping up here. Again, like, it went 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 6. That was a big jump. But then 5/9 is an even bigger leap. And then it goes to the Hulk, which is a 6/12, which is the same kind of leap. So Abomination's extra power, I think, is actually a little more valuable than Hulk's, and probably a little more cost-effective as a result of that. I think there's probably nothing wrong with running Abomination if you are not running like a big heavy hitter 6 card, but you still want to be able to just like throw a card down and win a lane. So I'm probably gonna give Abomination C tier. Next up we have Blue Marvel. This man, I like this variant. This is one of the variants I actually like, Blue Marvel. Blue Marvel, ongoing, your other cards have +1 power. Just across the board, every card you got +1 power, and that's good. He's a weak card. That 3 power does not do a whole lot of work. You know, if your field is already full and you're trying to, for instance, let's say you're losing a lane where there's 8 cards in it, like full on both sides, and you're losing by 1 or 2 points. You toss Blue Marvel down somewhere else, all of a sudden you're winning that deadlocked lane, and there's nothing your opponent can do about it other than playing their own Blue Marvel, or something similar. So I think it's situational. I think Blue Marvel's B tier. Next up we got Devil Dinosaur. We've briefly touched upon him already. Ongoing, +2 power for each card in your hand. Really needs to be super enabled by Moon Girl and these other cards like Cable, just like continuously bringing cards into your hand. I had one duel in Pool 2 where one of the locations was just like, I don't know, it did something where like it just filled my entire hand with random cards, I think, and that just absolutely made Devil Dinosaur go insane. That dude was at like 17 power. You need 4 cards in your hand, and then it's as strong as Abomination. So if you've got as much as that or more than that, then Devil Dinosaur is as good of a get as Abomination would be. If you can finagle more cards than that, then absolutely you gotta run Devil Dinosaur for sure. But I think it's situational. I think that card is kind of hard to get poppin', so I'm gonna give it B tier. Next up we have Gamora. Are you sick of B tier? Well, you're in luck, because this card does not go to B tier. On reveal, if your opponent played a card here this turn, +5 power. She becomes a 5/12, and it's so easy to get her to go off, because by turn 5, one of the lanes is probably already full, and it's a 50-50 chance, and you can probably read your opponent and guess where they're trying to go. You play Gamora there, you've beaten them. If they played Hulk, you tied. Like, that's good. Gamora is pretty much unstoppable, or uncontestable, as like a single card play in the same lane as another card. And as a result of that, I think she's probably the strongest 5 energy cost in Pool 1. So I'm going to give Gamora S tier. Next up we have Iron Man. Iron Man is an ongoing, your total power is doubled at this location. This is great There's a cheese you can do with this. I put Iron Man on Bar Sinister once, which is the location that just makes, if you play one card there, all 4 of your slots get filled with that card. So I had 4 Iron Mans on Bar Sinister, and they all just doubled 0, so obviously they weren't actually doing anything. But then next turn I played Ironheart, and it gave like 2 of the Iron Man plus 2 power, and then all of a sudden I had 160 power on the left lane. It was crazy. If you have 12 or more power in a lane with 3 cards, you can't beat Iron Man as a 4th card. Unless you've got like a double discarded Apocalypse, I suppose. Like, I say that, but he's a little harder to use than it seems. I don't know, honestly I think he's B tier. But I think as far as pool 1 is concerned, he's just a B. He doesn't pop off that hard. Next up we have Claw. Claw is, to me, is another contender for best 5-cost card. Ongoing, the location to the right has 6 power. That's huge. This basically makes him a 5/10, but split a bit. And that's just really good. Like, he can give you a little power in the place that you put him, and then plus 6 power on the right side. It's so good for getting rid of, like, contested deadlocks, or taking locations where nobody wants to play a card because there's some negative effect. So Claw is extremely versatile and useful. I wouldn't say I put him in every deck, but I put him in most decks. Probably A tier. You can make a case for S tier, and we'll think about it. Next up we have Professor X. I haven't been able to do anything with this card. I don't think this card is actually good. Professor X ongoing, lock down this location, cards can't be added, removed, etc. That includes you, so in theory what you would do is you're winning a lane, you play Professor X, and then you stay winning that lane. But what ends up happening is he's a 5/3, so he doesn't add anything, and then the turn you play him in the lane, your opponent plays a better card in that same lane, and then you lose the lane, and now the lane is locked down, and you can't fix the lane that you just lost because you played Professor X. Sitting in a frickin' banana, look at him. Like, what is up with that? Maybe this is just pure ignorance. I honestly think he's an F tier card. Next up we have Spider-Woman. I like Spider-Woman out here. I got the Carnagized variant. I think this is a super cool card. Very cool variant. I like that. But this is what the actual Spider-Woman. On reveal, afflict all enemy cards here with -1 power. She's basically like the opposite of the Punisher. You put her down, and then if your opponent has 4 cards, they're losing 4 power. But yeah, I think it's a 5/7 who has the potential to basically be a 5/11 if her effect is being maximally activated. Gives her a lot of leeway in completely changing the tide of a lane. I think she's very good at doing that. I would say that Spider-Woman is probably A tier. Next up we have White Tiger. I used to think this card was super good. I don't really think so anymore. White Tiger is a 5/1. On reveal, add a 7 power tiger to another location. Effectively, it makes her a 5/8 in terms of the power she distributes. This is her little tiger spirit, which is cool. I like it. Like, the lane you put her in is going to be helped nothing by the fact that she's there. The benefit is that she can add a 7 power tiger to a location that is maybe dangerous or can't have cards played directly there. And a 7 power tiger to a location like that is big. Like, that's better than throwing Claw down to the left of it and just having it do that. So like, White Tiger wins versus Claw in a battle of who can shore up a lane that doesn't have cards in it. It just doesn't feel good to put down a 5/1. Like, I can't really get past that. It doesn't feel good. It's like you're abandoning the lane that you put her in, which maybe you should put her in an abandoned lane. I think she's decent to Odin though. If Odin comes in there and reactivates her reveal ability, you get another +7 tiger somewhere. That could be decent. I think other cards can help her do some decent stuff. I'm gonna put her in C tier. Next up, we got America Chavez. This girl out here is a 69. You always draw this card on turn 6 and not before, so she's like a domino, but for a 6er. I think that's pretty decent until you realize that she's just as strong as Abomination, who costs 1 less. But at least she's consistent. I don't know. I don't know if, like, 9 power on turn 6 is enough to, like, win a single lane when other people could be playing Hulks or Apocalypses or even Odins or Heimdalls or like any of these, or Onslaughts, so even the ones that have less power but whose effects could like add more power than what she can do anyway. Other than possibly Spectrum, I think America Chavez might be the worst 6 card. I'm gonna throw her in D. Alright, next up we have Apocalypse. We've talked at length about this card with all the discard strategies. Apocalypse, that's been activated a couple times, can be the best 6 card in terms of power, for sure. Even if he's been activated once, that's really all it takes to compete with the Hulk. He's probably A tier. Alright, next up we got Heimdall. On reveal, move your other cards 1 location to the left. Move decks, man. We talked about it with Multiple Man. Yeah, man, Heimdall is not great in Pool 1. There's a card in Pool 2 named Vulture. You may have heard of him if you're in Pool 2. That card is absolutely broken, and Heimdall can be extremely good with that. But it's not even just about the effects that moving them activates, it's just about completely throwing your opponent's strategy off guard. If you activate Heimdall on reveal on the 6th turn, your opponents, they are looking at the lanes, they see where the power is at, they think they've got you all figured out, they're like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna play this card on this one lane and just add a little more power here. Maybe he'll play like a Hulk over here and try and, you know, snipe that one, so maybe I'll, like, you know, try and mitigate that with my Hulk or something because I have slightly more power. But then if you throw Heimdall into the mix, you could just, like, completely shift the entire field on your side to take over lanes that they never expected. And I think that that can be valuable. I don't think it works terribly often, but when it does, it feels really good. It feels like you just absolutely robbed them blind. I'm gonna give Heimdall a B. Hulk actually got buffed. I guess before he was a 6'11", now he is a 6'12". Good for him. Hulk is like the card to just throw down and win a lane, so he's a simple card, and he is played very simply. There's not a whole lot to it. That said, it's very difficult to equal him in greatness. Usually if you're contesting a point and you've got similar power and somebody throws Hulk down there and somebody throws something that's not Hulk down there, the person who did not throw Hulk down there is gonna lose. That's usually how it works. So I am going to put Hulk in A tier. Next up we have Odin. Odin in Pool 1 is very solid. This dude doubles on reveal abilities. He activates them. But some great cards for Odin to reactivate are... It's definitely useful on Ironheart. I like doing Odin on Ironheart just to get like an extra 6 power out of it. Tossing Odin behind a Wolf's Bane that was like the 3rd card placed in the lane can really do some numbers. That's gonna win you a lane for sure. But yeah, I think Odin's pretty good. I think there's very specific cards that he has to be played behind in order to do anything. But I would put Odin in A tier as well. I think this card really does do work in Pool 1. Next up we have Onslaught, second to last card in Pool 1. Onslaught is a 6/7. Ongoing effect doubles your other ongoing effects at this location. The obvious things to do are to put Onslaught behind Claw. That's a great way to win 2 lanes at once, because the 7 power will help you in the lane that you threw him in, and then you're going to get that +6 power on the right that nobody would have expected. Also very good to put him behind Blue Marvel, Captain America, the Punisher, Mr. Fantastic. There's pretty much any ongoing card that does like some kind of power boosting effect. Like, Onslaught is going to improve that, and it's going to feel nice when he does it. That said, I don't think he's as bombastic as Odin even. Probably in like B tier. Alright, and then last we have Spectrum, who I believe is the worst 6 cost. On reveal, give your ongoing cards +2 power. If you play exclusively ongoing cards, maybe, but I don't think Spectrum really gets it done. I have not seen much success with Spectrum at all. So I'm gonna have to give her like D tier. She's not horrendous, but especially like she also suffers from the syndrome of like, it doesn't feel good to play a 5 power card for 6 cost, even if she's doing other stuff. Yeah, man, that's the tier list. Let's scroll back up here again. So S tier, we got Uatu, we got Carnage, we got Gamora. Let's see, is there anybody else from A tier that should get moved up to S? I think you do put Claw up there. I have lost and won so many duels thanks to that card by itself. I think you do put Multiple Man in there. I think Elektra gets better as the pools go on, as the 1-cost cards get more and more dangerous. But I think as far as Pool 1 is concerned, Elektra's still A. But yeah, that's going to do it for the Marvel Snap tier list of Pool 1. You'll see me back here with the Pool 2 tier list as soon as I finish Pool 2, which, based on how slow that's going, is probably going to be in like a couple months. But, yeah, you know, appreciate you coming out. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at Sunburned Albino, and I will see you guys next time.